Welcome to the Home Building Hub, your essential podcast guide to building your new home. Hosted by industry experts Colin Bischoff and Darren Brennan, this conversational podcast will help better educate you about all things new home building so you can avoid costly mistakes and enjoy your building experience to the fullest, no matter which home builder you choose.
Hey there folks, welcome to the Home Building Hub. You're with Colin and co-host Darren Brennan as always. And today, Darren, we're going to talk about a topic that is pretty common. As lots get smaller, house designs get smaller and budgets get tighter, we want to share with people what you really need to know if you're buying a block that's under 300 square meters, which is very common these days. And personally, we deal with this a lot in our business, Darren, and
Absolutely.
We see the same mistakes over and over and over. So These three tips are going to educate you about lots under 300 square meters, and they're going to help you buy the right lot, or at the very least, understand the implications of the orientation and things like that. Okay, so let's jump straight in. How are you today, buddy? You good?
Going well, mate. Yeah, it's a bit warmer the weather, and we've done well. So when this episode goes to air, it'll probably be snow outside here in Ballarat. But right today, it looks like another cracking day, and yeah, things are going really well, mate.
Nice. It's good. You'd be happy. As of the time of recording this, the Bombers got a win last night. So.
Yeah, they knocked Melbourne over, which was nice. West Coast, your side remain not undefeated, but completely defeated, which is a bummer. But they're getting there, mate. They get a few more games into these kids. I'll come good.
Yeah, I can't wait till 2029. It's going to be great.
Yeah. Tasmania will be here and we'll wonder what we're doing.
Yeah.
It'll be a bye every other bloody week.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, well. Awesome. All right. How do you want to set this one up?
Mate, I might kick things off. Yes, obviously with the small lots, they're becoming more and more prevalent right now, certainly in Victoria. And what we're seeing is developers are adding a lot of these blocks in, and as you mentioned in the start, it's certainly to do with affordability, and they're becoming more and more appealing. I think when they were first released, people were like, "Geez, that's really small." Now, all of a sudden, when a 350 square meter block is seen as, "Oh, that's quite a nice size block," then under 300 really isn't far off that. And I think what has happened is the designs that are available to fit on those blocks have become really efficient. They're kind of cool. They're often built boundary to boundary or built on one boundary and not the other. And so you don't really realise that the house has been moved over on the boundary because they take all the windows off that wall and put lots of light windows on the other wall, and it works really well. So, there's plenty to like about these small lots. I guess in Victoria, we define these as small... these small lots under 300 square metres, so 299 or less, not 300 or more. They're called, or they're subject to what we call the Small Lot Housing Code. And what this has been done is, this is a new building code. It's been around for a little while now, I'm going to say about 10 years. And that's in place to avoid having to get town planning on these lots. It needs to be specified in the plan of subdivision that this is either a type A or a type B small lot housing lot. So it can't be just any old lot. You can't go and subdivide your backyard for under 300 square metres and then go, "Oh, cool, it's small lot housing code." No, that's not how it works. They need to be designated, and they are only in selected areas. So it's not across all of Victoria. It's only in the designated areas that have been specified that it can actually apply in. So just have a look at your plan of subdivision. Most of the new land subdivision areas, it does apply, but not to all. And to give you an example of that, I'm in Ballarat. Down the road to my right is an estate called Lucas. And in that estate, they don't have they're not gazetted to be small at housing code. So they can't do blocks under 300 square metres on the same pretense. You'd need to go and get town planning. So it can... And 2 minutes down the road from there, it is gazetted small lot housing code, and away they go. So, they've got certainly some different rules and regulations. Check with your land agent, check with your builder's rep, as we always say. For listeners in other states, obviously this doesn't necessarily apply directly to you because this is about Victoria, but there may be some familiar items that you're hearing here. And we're certainly hearing that smaller lots are becoming more and more applicable, again, based on affordability. So it may be helpful to help navigate some of your state's planning requirements in just listening in on this episode. But understand this is a Victorian-centric episode. So, Cole, I might kick over to you to talk about a bit more about the small lot housing code.
Yep. Yeah, so we try and keep this as, let's say, simple and direct as possible for you. So there are three things. There's more than three things. We're going to talk about three things, Daz. Lot types and setbacks. We'll give you a bit of an indication what that is, what that means, so you can have some, I guess, understanding when you're talking to a sales consultant and a builder or a land office salesperson. Orientation, it can severely impact the size of the home you can build. Okay, so we'll get into that a little bit. So we're talking about lot types, setbacks. We'll talk about orientation. And the last one is wall on boundary limits. This happens quite a lot, Darren. So we will talk a little bit about that as well. And this will best equip you with the three main areas that you don't need to be an expert. We're not here to try and get you to understand the small lot housing code, because I can tell you and assure you that most salespeople out there don't have their head around it either. Okay, that's just the reality, because normally we operate using res code. 4 meters to the front, 3 meters at the back usually ticks the box. With the smaller housing code, it's a little bit different. So it's another set of guidelines that a consultant would have to learn. Okay, so Daz, I want to kick off with the lot types and setbacks. Okay, so I'll do my absolute best to not overcomplicate this. This is something that we deal with quite a lot in our business. There are now three types of lots in a smaller housing code, and Darren sort of hinted towards where to find the type that your block is I guess, designated, and that's on the plan of subdivision, which you can be shown by the land agent or the building sales consultant. There'll be a plan of subdivision. If you scroll to the bottom, there will usually be a page of notes, and in those notes there will be an outline of this is, these lots here are they're type A lots, or these are type B lots, etc. Now, recently they've introduced type C lots, which we're not going to talk about because I'm yet to deal with one of those personally, Daz. I'm sure you guys probably don't either. But they apply to lots under 100 square meters. So we're just going to talk about type A and type B because they're the most common. Okay, so type A lots, instead of a 4 meter front setback like in res code, so 300 square meters and above, anything under 300 square meter that's a type A lot, you can actually have your house set back only 3 meters to the front. Okay, your garage still needs to be 5, but the house frontage can be only 3 meters from the front of the block. And a type B, even closer, Darren, that's 1.5 meter setback. So what that means, and why the code I think is really, really great, is because you avoid town planning and going through all the detail of that. And you basically, here is a pre-approved town planning document, basically, that you just got to tick the boxes. That means your surveyor's happy and off you go. As long as we, the builder, we know that we've designed a house that complies. So with small lot housing code and small lots in general, you'll find that not every plan will fit and meet the needs necessarily, because each lot is different. So sometimes you need to tweak it, to make it work. Sometimes you need to bring a room forward because it's a type B lot. Most plans you see on builder websites or in builder brochures will be aimed at type A. They'll generally have all the smaller plans to suit smaller lots will allow for a 3 meter front boundary and a 3 meter rear boundary. Okay. Sometimes type B can come into play, which means you could probably grab that front room and push it forward by 1.5 meters because you've got the space to do it. They want to allow you to build as much house on that block as possible. Okay, so that's the first thing in terms of setbacks. Another thing I just want to note, Darren, is corner lots are a little different as well. So with res code, the normal stuff over 300 square meters there, you generally, depending on the estate, but generally you have a 2 meter rule down the side. And in the case of small lot housing code, type A, you can actually have a 1.5 metre, and a type B, which again is the more tighter one that's allowed, you can actually have a 1 metre side setback down the corner secondary street as well. But the one thing to note that most people miss is that you need to have, if your wall is longer than 10 metres, there needs to be a little kick in, right? So let's say it's a garage, and then it's a kitchen, and then it's a meals. Generally, you would kick the meals in 300 millimeters, which is just a normal school ruler, at minimum, and just to create a bit of articulation is my understanding, Darren. But that's something that, I don't expect you as a listener to I guess, take away and remember that, but just flagging it for you so you can revert back to this episode when you're discussing it with a sales consultant or a land agent. Because truth be told, Darren, a land agent does not know the small lot housing code.
Yeah,
Unless they've
correct.
sold houses before. It's not their job to. Their job's to sell you the block of land. So please take this episode into consideration, because it will save you from making a mistake, or at least making you more aware of what you are buying, and as a result, what you can build on that block. So that's lot types and setbacks.
I think a couple of other things on that, Cole, the type B often are off opposite parks and stuff and recreational areas. So again, they'll allow a smaller front setback, and sometimes they'll be those lots that have got rear loaded. And what we mean by rear loaded is that the garage is at the back of the house, not facing the street front. So they allow you to bring the house forward a bit more. And again, quite often opposite parks. There was the other one is with the garage setback. It is 5 meters to the garage, but it's actually designated to the garage door. So again, depending on how your builder measures that distance between the front of the I guess the pillars on the front of the garage to the garage door will depend. I'm going to say it's 4.77 meters to the front of the brickwork, allowing 23 centimeters for the garage door to be there. But again, that may vary slightly. Builder to builder might be 4.8 or 4.81. So just chat with your builder as to how they're constructing that, and might just buy you a tiny little bit of space that will allow you to actually squeeze the house on there. So
it's a good one.
Yeah.
We do that all the time. It's a good little one, good little tip, Daz. But again, most consultants don't know about it. But that 23 centimeters, that 230 mil, that is actually allowed. And,
the other item also is the side setback. You used to have to be 200 mil off the boundary. Now you need to be 0 on that boundary. So I think that 10 meter rule might have come in because you've got to have enough. You've got to have a downpipe every 13 meters on a home. So I'm wondering if they bought that little kick-in rule just to make sure you had room to get a downpipe in. It makes sense if that's why they did that. So.
Yeah, you think about the practicality of building a wall and a boundary, both sides of the block. You've got to have a downpipe. Like, where's it going to go?
Correct.
So it makes sense.
And there's other things that builders have to consider, like running all the drainage underneath the home rather than wide of the home. So normally your drainage would be about 60 to 60 centimeters to a meter off the side of the house, whereas in these cases they run under the home. And again, that just creates a more complex build for the builder. And obviously, when you're building boundary to boundary, fall is really relevant as well. So, again, go in and have a chat to your builder so they can do a real assessment on how they're going to make this build work for you, because they can become a little bit tricky. So, and that's from a setback point of view. Then we jump into orientation. So, the direction of which the home faces is the next one really to talk about, Colin. Couple of bits on that. Like res code, you still need to provide 24 square meters of private open space to the home, right? And that's got to have a minimum dimension of 3 meters, but it can be divided into 2 sections. So you can have 2 areas of 12 square meters. And again, depending on the design of the home, that, for example, one of those could be a rooftop balcony or open area. Again, most builders like yourselves and ourselves, Colin, wouldn't build a rooftop balcony that would comply with that. But again, some small builders may do. Some may design something that works that way. Again, talk to your builder. Don't go in with the expectation of getting that rooftop balcony, because that might allow you to squeeze a bit more on the block, because most builders won't probably consider building that. Again, this private open space, you've got to also take into consideration the fact that you need to have 6 square meters of unshaded private open space that receives direct sunlight. So that's shading from your house, that's shading from your neighbour's house, and also shading from the fences. So be aware that that is the case. Again, north lots, so if your front door's facing north, they're generally the worst position. as that casts a shadow of the house, which is the biggest shadow, and will reduce that backyard area, meaning that you need to either have a shorter home or a longer block, one or the other, right? So to make that comply. You'll see that a lot of developers now, though, are mindful of that and are building them east and west facing, which is the most favourable to allow them to cut the smallest block possible. South is the second worst, obviously, where the fence is now shading the backyard, and again requires you to have a slightly shorter home or a longer block to give enough room for that 6 square metres of unshaded private open space. I guess the most important thing here is make sure you're dealing with a consultant that knows what they're actually doing, because if you get some of this stuff wrong, then you're going to either have a headache later or you may not be able to build the home. So you're either going to have to be reducing the house or you may not even be able to build the home at all because you just won't be able to get it to fit. So, make sure you are talking to a consultant that knows what they're doing. Ask them if they've built on smaller housing code lots before. If they haven't, that's okay. But if they got the backup support in their office to run through and check that it's actually going to be compliant, and ideally buy an east or west facing block, and you'll have a lot less issues when that's the case. And I guess to give you the example is if you've bought a south facing lot, instead of needing a 3 metre backyard to get 2 metres of unshaded private open space, you'd need a 3.65 metre block. Again, remind me on this one though, Colin, is that at 2440 ceiling heights? I think it is.
2590 would still
2590,
be okay.
cool.
Yeah.
So again, if you get a 2740 ceiling heights, it's not going to impact on the south facing, but it will impact on the north facing because your house is now shadowing further. So if you have a north facing block, you'd be at 2590 ceiling heights at 4.65 metres. But if you had 2740 ceiling heights, then that's going to cast a greater shadow, for example. Or if you've got a 2-story home, likewise. So again, understanding the impacts of how that unshaded private open space is going to be created and working with your consultant. And again, some will have computer programs that'll be able to draw that for them. Others won't. So just, find out what information they can provide up front so that before you buy the block.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think people struggle to get their head around this one
a
lot. But you're right with, 2590, so middle height ceilings, these numbers apply. To try and paint that picture for people, like if your house is facing north, it means the sun's in front of you, and that means that the backyard's going to have the shadow of the house. And what we're saying is that there has to be a part of your backyard that has no shadow, no shade, and that needs to be a 2 metre by 3 metre box, basically. So naturally, if you're facing north, the house is the tallest part. It's going to cast the longest shadow. Therefore, you need to have a shorter house or a longer block, as Darren said. So that's what we're trying to articulate here for you. You don't probably need to understand all the details of the measurements and stuff, but the point is, if you are buying a small lot and it's north facing or it's south facing, you need to identify or understand that there's going to be some changes to the plan or additional backyard length requirements for part of that rear yard. It's very important. We get people that get stung on that all the time, Darren. So, it's a really good one. And I think leading into the last of the three things that we want to highlight for you is building walls on boundaries. So naturally, being a smaller lot, it's very common. Every small lot will have a wall and boundary pretty much. So instead of, like the traditional lots where you've got like a brick wall and then you've got like this, meter and a little bit of pathway down the side of the house, with a small lot a lot of the time, you don't actually have that luxury. They're built from one boundary where the garage is, right on the boundary, right through across to the other one. And you got to factor in that you now know you don't have a window on a boundary. You can't, because there's nowhere to look through. There's no light to get in. So some of these small lot designs will be quite clever in that they have a certain section that's a wall on boundary, and then that kicks back in, and then there'll be a window there. There'll be like this little jut out that has a window here and a window there and a sliding door, from a laundry or whatever. So the designs are quite clever to allow for this. Most builders will have it covered. But I want you to know as a listener or a viewer that when you're building a wall on boundary, the small lot housing code is quite generous. It allows you to pretty much build as long as you want, because they want you to fit as much house on the block as you can, because they're understanding and respectful of the fact that it's a small block. With res code, you've got more restrictions. You've got more private open space requirements and things like that. You can't. Site coverage is another one. You're restricted with that for res code, whereas it's a lot more generous in small lot housing code. So here is the one tip I want you to take away. When you build a small lot housing code house on a small lot, a wall on boundary, you must check your neighbouring lot size. Okay, so if you are a house, let's say your block's 10.5 metres by 28 deep, that's 294. I think I wrote 2 in there, Daz, but 294 square metres. That's a small lot housing code house and lot. Okay, so that's good. But if your neighbour is 350 square metres, let's say the neighbour is 12.5 wide by 28 deep, they are subject to res code, which means that you now have a restriction and a limit on the allowable wall on boundary length. I hope we're not getting too technical here, but the long story short, if you're buying a small lot and your neighbour, one of them or both of them, is not a small lot, it's 300 or above, you have a limit to what you can build on the boundary in terms of wall on boundary. Now, I've got a formula here that could be done, but I don't know if we need to go into that level of detail, but your consultant should know what that formula is, or someone in their office should know it. But basically, in that example where you've got 10.5 by 28, your neighbour is 12.5 by 28, in that case, you can only build 14.5 metres of wall on boundary between the two lots. Okay, so that sort of restricts you, Darren, because a lot of those designs on 28 deeps would have more than 14.5 metres of wall on boundary. So you need to be mindful of that as well. So
It's one that gets people caught out a lot.
Yeah, because I think commonly
down the track.
People don't know about it. Actually, truth be told, years ago, the only way we found out about it is because we designed a house that didn't comply.
Yeah.
We had no idea that was a condition at the time. That was many years ago, but we've certainly learned from it since. So these are the things that, I guess hopefully help you. So I think if it's okay, Daz, I'll just wrap it up so you can walk away with a checklist. You're buying a small block. You need to consider lot type. Is it a type A or is it a type B? Because that will tell you what the setbacks are. Okay, type A is the most common. Type B, you can build a little closer to the boundary. Now that's great because you can build a bigger house, but it's also 1.5 away from the front, from the nature strip, basically, or the footpath, I should say. So that's the first thing. The second thing, as Darren covered, is orientation. If you're going to buy a small lot, ideally east or west facing is better to achieve an unshaded requirement. If you're buying south or you're buying north facing, you need to understand that will impact the dwelling length that you can put on there, because the backyard will need to be bigger in a section. And in wall on boundary, if you're buying a small lot, ideally buy it next to two other small lots. But if you have to, understand there's a wall on limit boundary if next door is over 300 square metres or 300 square metres and above, Daz. Yeah.
Perfect.
There we go. Geez, I was hoping we didn't get too technical, but I don't know if that's possible in this episode with this topic. That's what we're here for, to help you understand these things and navigate those things. But
you can also, jump online and Google. There are some practice notes and also the actual code, and so you can download that yourself and have a read through and help educate yourself along the way as well, so that you feel really comfortable when you're talking to a consultant. And again, they may need to consult their experts. Sometimes they're even complex to a level that they need to talk to the building surveyor to make sure that the building surveyor is going to approve that plan, so that we don't have any headaches, leading into getting to site and getting a building permit. So
yeah, nice.
It is a little tricky.
Awesome. Well, there's a fair insight, guys. Thank you for watching, or thank you for listening. As always, please leave us a 5-star review on the platform you're on. And if you've got feedback, comments, topic ideas, then jump on website or send us an email, hello@homebuildinghub.com.au. Until the next one, we will leave it there, and we'll see you then. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Home Building Hub. As part of the podcast, we have to be a little careful to cover ourselves on a legal standpoint. So we do have a disclaimer. Whilst we're all about providing value to you, this podcast should not be considered legal or financial advice. It does contain general information only, and you should seek out independent professional advice on your own personal situation before you make any legal or financial decisions.
1, 2.